Welcome to the Stop Down Photography Podcast, episode 30. I'm your host, Scott Davenport. Today's topic is negative space versus dead space. Hi everyone, thanks for joining me this week. Hope you're keeping well. Before we get into today's topic of negative space versus dead space, which, as you'll hear, is a thing I struggled with, I want to ask a question. A question I hope you'll send me your thoughts on. What aspect of your photography is the most challenging for you? You can contact me directly at stopdownpodcast.com. Messages come straight to me. I'd really like to hear from you. Let's talk about an area of composition I wrestled with for a long time. Negative space versus dead space. Both sound bad? One is good. And how do I tell the difference? And that's the thing that got me in a bind early in my photography. Right away, straight off the bat, the terminology is just plain confusing. Both sound bad. They sound like things we don't want. Negative. A negative reaction is a bad reaction. It's unfavorable. I don't want negative numbers in my bank account. We don't want negativity in our lives. Then there's dead. Does that even need an explanation? Dead is dead. So let's start with the definition. Let's just start with negative space in a photo is actually good. Dead space is bad. All right. So how do we tell the difference? And I was reminded of this conundrum recently. I was coaching another photographer in an online session. We were walking through her compositions, and the topic of dead space versus negative space came up. She had two different photographs, both taken on the same beach. Let me describe these to you, and while I do, think about the use of space as I describe these images. The first photo, an expansive beach. The sand is well-trodden, not footprints per se, just a typical pattern of a well-visited beach, little mini dunes, like fist-sized dunes. An interesting sky, partly cloudy, nearing sunset. There's still some brighter blue in the sky. The horizon is about the center of the frame where the beach meets the water, and in the distance at the horizon is the silhouette of a lone person, right in the center of the frame. The second photo, another spot on the same beach. In the foreground, the lower right third, is some leftover bones of a seagull. It occupies a smaller space compared to the rest of the scene. The same well-trodden sand retreating into the frame. The sky is cloudier, a little darker, a little more ominous. The horizon is again about the center of the frame, and there's nothing at the horizon. Which photo has dead space and which one has negative space? And I know that's kind of tough. I'm doing my best to deliver photography into your ears with these descriptions. But let me break it down like this. The first photo, the lone silhouette on the beach, that's an excellent use of negative space. The second photo, these bones of this bird on the beach, that scene had a lot of dead space. And how do I judge that? Like I said, I wrestled with this for a long time, trying my hands at minimal compositions, failing all the time. It finally clicked, and when it did, it boils down to this. Look at your scene, look at your photo, look at your composition, and ask this question. Do the empty areas reinforce the subject of the photo? If the answer is yes, that's negative space, and that's good. If the answer is no, the photo has dead space, and that's bad. In the first photo I described, the subject is the silhouette on the beach. However distant, that is the subject. It's the anchor for the photo. And the surrounding emptiness, this vast expansive beach, the open sky, the choice to frame the horizon at the center with the person at the center, all of that surround reinforces the subject. The eye is drawn directly to that silhouette. So while there's emptiness in the scene, it is reinforcing that singular subject. In the second photo, the emptiness did not reinforce the bones of this bird in the lower right third. The emptiness drew the eye away. You're left drifting through the frame, searching for something else to latch on to and never landing anywhere. Judging negative space against dead space is a matter of knowing your subject. Ask yourself, what is the subject of the photo? Does my composition reinforce the subject? Does a minimal composition and its surrounding emptiness accentuate that subject? And when you answer yes to those questions, you've got negative space and you've got a stronger photo. Some thoughts and general studio news this week. Episode 30, the count of episodes is starting to creep up there. When I started this podcast, I had maybe 10 shows sketched out. And I admit, I get worried sometimes about the next show. Do I have a topic that's worth talking about? Do I have enough about that topic to share it and turn it into a podcast that wouldn't be a minute long? I'm not doing a photo news related show, so I can't just pull an article from Petapixel or a DP Review and talk about it. Yet I hope that's one of the reasons you're listening to this podcast. You want more than a news show, and you can help. I asked a question at the top of the show. What aspect of your photography is the most challenging for you? So please do send me your thoughts. Use the contact form on stopdownpodcast.com, and it may be the topic for the next show. I've also been working on my next video course. This is a post-processing centric course all about Luminar start to finish. And it's like a cross-section of how to use Luminar for a variety of edits, from one-click looks, AI, to handcrafted styles. I've storyboarded several of the videos, got a few recorded. It'll be coming in August. And even if Luminar isn't your primary editor, the thing I really like about post-processing courses, and I do the same thing, I can watch techniques and styles applied using one tool and translate them to the ones that I use. Members of the Patreon community will get this course for free. That's right, Luminar start to finish, 100% free for members of Patreon. It's a way I can tangibly say thank you for supporting this podcast. And I know I thank you all each and every week, and I'm going to do it again. Thank you to the supporters on Patreon. It is making this podcast possible, and you're helping thousands of other photographers enjoy their photography and grow their craft, supporting the other things I do in addition to this podcast. If you're interested in learning more about the Patreon community, check the show notes. There's also a support the show button on every page of stopdownpodcast.com where you can learn more. And that will conclude this week's episode. Negative space versus dead space. It comes down to knowing your subject, and if that emptiness reinforces your subject, you've got a strong photo. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please rate it and review it on Apple Podcasts. Tell a friend, share it on social media. And until next time, my name is Scott Davenport. Have fun.